And we're trying to win ball games. We're not trying to appease the masses. We're trying to win ball games.
We are not trying to appease the masses. We are trying to win ball games. Those are the words coming straight from the head coach of the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White. That is the philosophy being applied to a team that holds the keys to the entire future of the league. Let us really stop and think about what that means for a moment. You are tuning into the absolute truth on sports, and we need to have a very serious, no-holds-barred conversation about the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Caitlin Clark, and the undeniable reality of what is happening to the viewership, the fan base, and the overall product of this league right now. We also have WNBA legend Nancy Lieberman weighing in on the undisputed fact that Caitlin Clark pretty much drives this entire league. She owns this whole league. And why does she own it? It is simply put, before she arrived, people were not tuning in. There were no massive new collective bargaining agreements being discussed. There was no big money flowing in from networks. And there absolutely were no mega ratings without Caitlin Clark on the television screen. So, you could say to a certain extent that the fans have the high ground right now. As Obi-Wan Kenobi once told Anakin Skywalker, "I have got the high ground." Well, the fans have the high ground because the dynamics of this league are entirely unique compared to the rest of the sporting world. Look at the landscape of professional sports. Major League Baseball does not have to worry about this kind of existential viewership crisis. The National Basketball Association does not have to worry about this. The National Football League certainly does not have to worry about this. College football does not have to worry about this. But the WNBA absolutely has to worry about what the fans think, because they can easily go right back to having no ratings, just like that. They can go back to having absolutely zero viewership, just like that. They can go back to having no ticket sales. By the way, while I am talking about ticket sales, I have recently glanced at the tickets available for Indiana Fever home games. There are currently tickets sitting there for $10, $11, and $15. That kind of pricing would have been completely unheard of back in 2024 or the beginning of 2025, before the injury situation started altering the landscape. Let us start by breaking down exactly what Stephanie White is saying when she declares that she is not here to please the fans. She states that she cannot worry about what the fans think. Now, I would normally say that if a coach or a general manager in a professional sports league constantly worried about what the fans thought, they would be doomed. The old saying in sports is that if you worry too much about what the fans think, you are doomed to eventually end up sitting beside them in the stands. I think in most traditional, heavily established leagues, with a century of history, that is a very accurate assessment. But in this league right now, no, I do not think that is accurate at all. I think these coaches, the other players on the roster, the ownership groups, and the league leadership should all be fully and acutely aware of whether or not the fans are actually pleased with the product being put out on the floor. Why? Because you do not have a massive, century-long history of having these millions of dedicated fans. You just recently acquired these fans, and the vast majority of these fans are completely tied to watching one specific generational player. It is a very unique and fragile situation. Yet, when Stephanie White is asked about the overwhelming frustration from fans, she brushes it off. She's asked directly about the neighbor who comes up and says he is frustrated, yelling at his television because he wants Caitlin to shoot the basketball more. She's asked about the social media outcry, the visible frustration when Caitlin does not have the ball in her hands, or when the team fails to perform in the fourth quarter. When asked for her answer to those deeply invested fans, Stephanie White bluntly claims that she does not really have an answer for the fans. She says her responsibility is to answer to the team and to the franchise. She claims she only has to answer to the team. But what about the higher-ups? What about the owner of the Indiana Pacers and the Fever? Why is she not actively having to answer to him about the entertainment value of the product? She should be saying that she has to answer to her team and that she has to answer to the ownership group who signs the checks. Is anybody actually awake up in the executive offices? Is the Pacers' leadership, is Herb Simon even paying close attention to what is happening with the Indiana Fever right now? Or is this entire operation just a tax write-off at this point? Stephanie White continues to justify her stance by saying they are just trying to win ball games and figure things out on a consistent basis. She talks about the Big Three learning to play together again, referencing the time Caitlin missed a year ago and how finding an offensive flow takes time. She mentions that other players had the ball in their hands frequently in the past, and that everyone is trying to find their way. She promises that when they find continuity, the fans will see easier shot opportunities and better shot quality. She insists that her only focus is on getting the best shot quality possible, maintaining balance, and getting ready for the playoffs in September and October. So, she essentially tells the world that she does not care what the fans think. When you actively say you are not trying to appease the masses, you are clearly stating that you do not care about the entertainment value of the game. And again, that is completely fine coming out of the mouths of most head coaches in most other major professional sports. But in this specific sport, let us be entirely real here, this sport is still fundamentally hanging on by a thread in the grand scheme of the mainstream sports consciousness. People love to point to the new media rights deal. Yes, they secured a massive new media rights deal. But advertisers and broadcast partners can and will get incredibly angry if the television ratings are not where they are projected and supposed to be. Unfortunately for Stephanie White, the specific brand of basketball that you play and the stylistic choices you make on the offensive end actually matter here. Some will argue, well, what if they win the championship? What if they win it all playing this way? And my response to that is, what if they do win the title? But the journey there is incredibly boring, and ultimately nobody cares to watch it. I am just keeping it completely real with you. We actively see the genuine reactions during watch parties. We monitor the reactions across all platforms during these games, and the overwhelming, undeniable sentiment and thought process throughout these broadcasts is how boring the games have become. The games are boring. The brand of basketball that Stephanie White currently has this Indiana Fever team playing is fundamentally boring to the average viewer who tuned in for magic. People want to see a brand of basketball reminiscent of the Showtime Los Angeles Lakers. They want to see the electric, fast-paced, high-volume shooting style of the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry. The fans absolutely do not want to see this slow, half-court, extra pass, hockey substitution style of grinding basketball. We do not want to see that. Professional sports are, fundamentally and essentially, an entertainment business. People are spending their valuable time and hard-earned money because they want to be actively entertained. And I think, quite unfortunately for the long-term health of this league, the people in charge desperately need to be aware of that reality. This brings us to the insights of Nancy Lieberman, who spoke at length about absolutely everything that Caitlin Clark means to the survival and prosperity of this league. As Lieberman perfectly stated, you simply cannot deny that she brings the massive media attention. Everyone is talking about her. As Lieberman pointed out, the media probably was not talking about anybody in this league 4 years ago to this unprecedented magnitude. She has successfully done her job of elevating the sport, just exactly like Tiger Woods did for the entire game of professional golf, and just exactly like Michael Jordan did for the global expansion of the National Basketball Association. Lieberman classifies her as a true generational player. She arrived in the professional ranks already equipped with a massive, dedicated fan base consisting of millions of people, and it is undeniably helping the entire league grow. Let us be completely honest, the league does not secure that massive $2.2 billion collective bargaining agreement and media rights package without her physical presence on the court. Lieberman rightly notes that while there are incredible, formidable talents like Aja Wilson, Nafisa Collier, Brianna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, and Sabrina Ionescu, it is these young generational players entering the league who possess this incredible, pre-existing fan base. These young stars were already making millions of dollars while playing in college through their name, image, and likeness deals. They simply transferred that massive economic power and viewer interest directly into the professional league. Therefore, the veterans and the coaching staffs should not be jealous of them. As Lieberman profoundly stated, they should be celebrating them, not merely tolerating their presence. Lieberman believes the Fever will ultimately be fine, noting they have great players like Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, who is a star among stars, and solid role players. But she also highlights how opposing teams consistently give their absolute maximum effort when playing against Clark. Lieberman broke down a specific play against the Mystics, questioning why a defender would aggressively jump a passing lane and allow a straight-line pass to Caitlin Clark for a wide-open logo three-pointer. You just do not let a shooter of her caliber get the basketball in that situation. You have to completely deny her the ball. That level of intense, playoff-style defense in the regular season proves a larger point. Every single night, this Indiana Fever team is going to receive every opposing player's absolute best. Physical effort and every opposing team's absolute best. Strategic shot, a large part of that heightened intensity is undoubtedly driven by the underlying animosity directed towards the specific player on the Fever roster that all the fans are actually showing up and tuning in to celebrate and watch. Yes, some opposing players are jealous. Some are petty, and some are acting hateful about the unprecedented attention she receives. So they go out of their way to give the Fever their absolute best shot. They give Caitlin Clark their most physical and aggressive defense. There are undoubtedly many great, talented basketball players out there in the world, but most of them do not get picked up defensively all the way down the court while simply trying to casually bring the basketball past half court. You heard Nancy Lieberman clearly explain how Caitlin Clark has completely transcended the traditional boundaries of the sport. There is a very specific monetary reason why the WNBA and its players are suddenly receiving all of these new perks, chartered flights, and national television slots. But now comes the difficult part. Now the league, the teams, and the coaches have to intelligently figure out exactly how to keep those lucrative perks. How do we actively maintain people's genuine interest now that we have finally captured it? It seems glaringly obvious to me that Stephanie White is completely unaware of the historical context of this league. Because of their long documented lack of mainstream success and their historical lack of television eyeballs, they need to be incredibly hyper-aware of things like offensive playing style and the pure entertainment value of the overall product they are presenting to the public. When a coach casually says she cannot appease the fans, that sounds great in a vacuum of pure basketball strategy. But in the real economic world, eventually, those ignored and bored fans will simply tune out entirely. I completely understand that they just recorded a massive television rating. They successfully drew a massive 2.5 rating for their game against the New York Liberty. But let us add the necessary context to that number. Yes, they drew a huge number, but they were playing against New York, which is an absolute gargantuan media market with a heavily promoted super team. However, just 1 week earlier, when they played against the Portland Fire, the television rating plummeted down to a 1.3. That is simply not a good rating for a nationally televised broadcast on the main CBS network. So the reality of the situation is clear. Yes, people are absolutely still tuning in, but only as long as it is one of the biggest, most heavily promoted marquee games on the schedule. But if it is just a standard regular season game against a lesser opponent, no, the ratings are demonstrably down across the board, even for the heavily favored Indiana Fever. That is a real, undeniable statistical trend that is currently happening. When they are just playing a regular game against an average opponent, their ratings are suffering. It literally required a massive matchup against a giant market like New York to draw the type of massive television rating that a generational talent like Caitlin Clark should theoretically be getting a lot of the time right now. But why is that happening? It is happening because when you tune in and you are not actually able to watch her freely cook on the offensive end as a viewer, you naturally get frustrated. You get incredibly bored watching a stagnant offense. You get tired of waiting for the explosive moments that never arrive. Eventually, you make the conscious decision to just turn off the television. You decide, I am not staying up past midnight for the Sparks game. I am not staying up late to watch a Valkyries game. I will just catch the 2-minute highlight reel on my phone in the morning. This is a massive shift in consumer behavior. If you look back to the magic of the 2024 season, I would be damned if I was going to go to bed early. I felt an absolute obligation to stay up late and watch every single minute of it, primarily because I cover this sport for a living. But honestly, if I did not cover this sport professionally, if I was just a regular sports fan, absolutely not. I would not stay up late to watch these heavily restricted, boring games. I simply would not do it. I am just being completely real about the entertainment value. When it comes to these late-night, West Coast games with the current style of play, you can completely forget about it. Back in 2024, with the fast-paced, high-flying style, I absolutely would have stayed up to watch, whether it was my job or not. Even in early 2025, before the unfortunate injury situation altered the team dynamics, whether it was my job or not, I would still be eagerly staying up late right now to watch them play. But with the restrictive, slow, unentertaining way this specific team currently plays basketball under Stephanie White, hell no. It is simply not worth the sacrifice of sleep for the average consumer. The league must adapt, the coaching must evolve, and they must recognize that without the entertainment value provided by their biggest star, the unprecedented momentum they have built could easily disappear. Let me know what your thoughts are on this massive dilemma facing the league. Peace out until next time.